Hello, this is Jonathan Steele coming to you with my new episode, Could You Be More Specific? Coming to you through the Stay Woke podcast. And on this episode, I want to title this Until Further Notice. And on this episode, what I want to address is the recent news that's going on with R.Kelly and some of the new information that's been coming out with him in regards to some of his situations that are going on legally, and also the new campaign that's out against him in regards to his career. And then I also want to touch on what Gayle King and what she had to say in relation to the MeToo movement and how those stories kind of correlate. So I'm going to start off talking about the recent news with R.Kelly. I know it's a campaign that's been made to kind of disassociate yourself with R.Kelly from his music and this boycott. What's interesting with him is that, you know, his past in terms of how he's been viewed is now been kind of known of for like 15 years. Ever since really that 03-02 window, we've kind of been having a weird relationship with R.Kelly. And a lot of it is because the kind of music he's made. I know he's made some of the best music that's been made, especially early on in his career, but even now his music is still well received, especially in regards to the Black community. He's still well received overall. Now, I know that's kind of changed lately, especially in a lot of the recent news with him. But I do think it's interesting now with this new Mute R.Kelly movement that's going on against him, because this one seems like it's really picking up steam. In particular with R.Kelly, one of the things that I think is really fascinating about him is that R.Kelly really knows who he is. And like, you don't really see people like that, especially in today's time, because most people, when something incriminating happens, they quickly apologize and they back down. R.Kelly is one of the handful of people I've ever seen where they still stand true in what they are, in what they're about, and people still throw shots at them. But it's hard to make someone feel bad when they don't feel bad about something themselves. And the only people I can really think of in terms of that have been able to do that successfully are really right off the top of my head is Donald Trump, R.Kelly, Floyd Mayweather, and from a corporation standpoint, Chick-fil-A. Those are like some of the most recent examples where I can look at it that, wow, these are particular brands and entities that they're not going to let the mass majority dictate how they move. And that's not to say I agree with any of their moves, but it's just like you respect them on the sense of, if you can stand true in your conventions, then why can't I stand true in mine? You know, it's very compelling to watch, but they are doing it through this new campaign. They're doing it the way that, you know, a lot of times is effective. They're going after him financially. They're going after promoters that book him for shows, and they're going after, you know, radio stations to stop playing his music. I mean, you can do that. I mean, but R. Kelly is such an artist where he can still create I've never been on a website with him, but he can create a website. He can put out music through that. He'll still be able to book venues. There'll still be a promoter if they have a spot that he can go to, and people will still come and pay to see him. It hasn't died out. I remember a Boondocks episode touched on that with R. Kelly, is that, you know, Black people's love of R. Kelly is very strong overall. And it's because of the type of artist he's been. Obviously, if he's actually, you know, abusing young girls, that's not something I would be behind or subscribe to. I know what really hurts him personally is him marrying Aaliyah. And that, to me, when that happened at that time, especially at the age she was at, that was the first red flag. Is like, he's marrying a 14, 15-year-old girl? Like, how was that, you know, approved? So ever since then, when that happened, that's when that really big red flag kind of went off with R. Kelly. But again, like, we didn't, you know, go get too upset about that, because, you know, he ended up putting out, you know, I Believe I Can Fly, and, you know, and then all of a sudden he puts out I Wish, and, you know, it's R. Kelly, you know, was consistently made really good music. But in regards to the MeToo founder, I believe her name is Tarina Burke, kind of going at him in this way, you know, it's momentum behind their campaign because of the recent news with Bill Cosby. But one of the things I think that correlates really well to that is what Gayle King said about trusting due process, and that it's a very dangerous precedent to set. That, yes, once someone makes an accusation, we got to keep it there. It's an accusation. You just can't, leave it there and say, well, then this person should immediately not be allowed to work. They should be immediately discarded, because what you've done when you do that is that you've eliminated due process, and you don't really trust your platform. You really don't. I mean, for people to just immediately jump to that conclusion, and then for you to even mention that you're immediately attacked for saying like, hey, can we just go through the process first? People get really upset about that. They're like, well, why do you think I would make this up? It's like, well, gee, if you believe in what you're saying, then we'll just go through this and it should check out. Not everything that comes out of somebody's mouth is uniformly believed to be true. There's people that are going to be listening to this podcast that don't believe what I'm saying is true. And that's fine. And I would be more than comfortable to speak with you about it. And we can go over that. And if I stand corrected on some points, then I'll stand corrected. Because I'm not interested in having my convictions be proven to be true. I just want to get my facts straight. So I thought what Gayle King said in regards to that was very, very meaningful and very smart, that to remind people like, this is how this thing is supposed to go. And Me Too kind of was, it started off really, really hot, especially around the times earlier this year with the award shows, with the Oscars, and then it started to dissipate when some of the stories that were coming out, especially in regards to the one with Aziz Ansari hit, because when that got grouped up into a Me Too situation, it was like, and Ashleigh Banfield, who's a credible journalist, was like, wait a minute, this is a bad date. This isn't a rape situation. He didn't force himself on you. And then that's when the error kind of started to go out a bit. And Ashleigh Banfield at the time, she took heat from a lot of women for saying that what she was doing was hurting the movement. She was like, no, what's hurting the movement is if we have inaccurate facts or inaccurate claims being brought to an issue that they don't match up. That's what hurts the movement. It's not me questioning it. It's when a claim is being made on this particular issue that is not deemed to be so. That's what hurts issues. And it did. It hurt a lot of those. I think in light of that, I think for myself personally, I always just try and keep that in mind, that I want to make sure that no matter who it is, I know we have an affinity to a lot of people, especially in the public eye. You got to remember, like, you always got to stay loyal to principle over people. And that's really hard to do, because a lot of times people are mostly loyal to people. But then when they have, an issue or a hashtag or anything like that they support, they feel like they have to uniformly support it. I'm all for the Me Too movement in regards to outing sexual predators and reporting sexual assault victims, because it's a new, I believe, HBO documentary. I got to follow up on it to check for sure. I think it's called I Am Evidence, where it discusses multiple accounts of women being raped, and there's no follow-ups. Reports are not being submitted, even to the point where records are not even being, reviewed. And it's a documentary that I got to really watch for sure. I remember Mariska Hargitay, who's on Law and Order SVU. I believe she's on that documentary. She's actually been doing a lot of work behind the scenes in regards to sexual assault victims. So this is a real issue, and this is something that happens a lot. And in regards to that, like, we got to be really careful then when we're addressing those issues, that we keep that in mind. With R.Kelly, the idea of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, especially for a guy at his age being 51, that's really weird, but that's not necessarily illegal. Now, based off this recent investigation, if it is proven that, it is a cult, which, no one really knows for sure, or if it is a living situation where either some of these girls have either signed, non-disclosure contracts or they get paid to stay there, that'll end up probably sorting itself out in the coming days and weeks. But until that kind of comes in and that's really laid out for sure, it's kind of hard to make a complete assessment of R. Kelly. Now, with that being said, R. Kelly's not innocent here. I mean, he did an interview with DeRa on BET where DeRa was just giving him softball questions like, hey, or do you try and stay away from teenagers, in so many words? And he says, I have some teenage friends. Now, the pro of that, I guess you could say from an interview standpoint, was that at no point in that interview did DeRa ever shame R.Kelly. But from R.Kelly's viewpoint, and from the viewpoint of people who handle crisis management and public relations, in order for him to maintain innocence, he can't show guilt in that moment. So for him to say something as odd as, yes, I have some teenage friends, as weird as that is, in a delusional way, it does maintain this facade like, oh no, I'm a normal dude. I don't know where these stories are coming from. I'm oblivious to this. Whether that's true or not. But he did a great job of selling that. I still think that's weird, because if I was him and I'm as successful as he is and I'm a multimillionaire, I'm not really into hanging out with 18 and 19-year-olds. That's just not really, my ideal, especially if I was at his standpoint and his position in life. Hanging around kids is not my idea of a good time. But that's something that, apparently that's always been linked to him. So it is going to be interesting to kind of see how some of these things unfold with R.Kelly. In regards to Gayle King and what she said about the MeToo movement, I think it'll be wise of them to want to keep this door open in terms of having a dialogue and wanting to emphasize that we do believe in due process. We want to support the court system. We do believe that people have a right to still share their stories, but we've got to make sure that we vet these issues out no matter what the allegations or claims are. And whatever we can do to help support these women in regards to some of these claims, we'll be there for them. And that's not, and that's not them, now kowtowing to people for saying like, hey, well, you guys are backing down and you're letting people run over your movement. They're not doing that. They're offering assistance to the women that are actually going through these situations, but at the same time, they are reserving judgment, because once you get publicly shamed and convicted publicly, it's hard to get out of that, because no matter how those things turn out, in the end, you'll always be guilty to a certain segment of society. And that's the thing that's kind of really disturbing, because if going back to the thing with Aziz, when that was the overall consensus that it was a bad date and he just didn't read verbal cues good, no one said anything. It just was a story that went away. But it's always going to be a segment of the population that's going to believe like, wow, the guy from Parks and Recs is a rapist, even though when you read the details of that story, that was really weird, because she was talking about things that had nothing to do really too much with that encounter, about not liking red wine versus white wine, and them watching TV and things like that. Their chemistry with each other wasn't good, but to go from chemistry not being good to rape, that's a pretty wide margin in that. So that's just an example that I wanted to kind of pay to that. And I'm looking to probably in the future want to touch back on the story again, especially in the coming days when there's more information. I want to thank everyone that actually took the time to listen to this podcast. I'm looking forward to doing more in the future. So in regards to this moving forward, always, reserve judgment until further notice. I want to thank everyone that's listened to this podcast. I'm looking forward to do more. Again, my name is Jonathan Steele. Thank you for listening to Could You Be More Specific? And I'll see and talk to you guys real soon.